Chapter 13. God responds. Throughout this process, the foremost thing in my mind was the promise, must have been the promise by Mervyn on his last visit, that I would receive a heavenly visit or have a spiritual encounter. I didn't quite know the difference between the two yet. As he said it with conviction, because he was too aware that I was not yet sold on this whole thing. Yes, things had occurred in the interim which strongly tilted the way, or tilted my search for truth and God towards believing and accepting the Bible account as being more than just probable. But I still had the set of questions I had asked God, which I had no answers to yet. Now, I don't know if at that point I may have considered those questions to be the deciding factor for me to become a believer, but I somehow felt it would impact my life in a great way if I did have them, or when I got them. I went about my usual business of the week, but I decided to fast for a few days so I would be ready or prepared for this promised heavenly visit or spiritual encounter that I had no idea would take place when. So on the Wednesday night of that week, I decided to go home straight from the office as I felt nauseous from the hunger caused by the fast. I got quite a few tips from Glenda and her family, who had been a Christian for quite some time, and I followed this completely. I retired to my room before Cindy got back home, because I knew that if she found me up and about, I would either have to go with her to the Compton Hotel's ladies' night, or at the very least drop her there. It was quite a distance from where we lived and on the other side of town, and my energy levels were not good, so I decided to go to my room. I occupied the last bedroom on a long corridor with the middle one empty and the landlady in the first room, which was right next to the lounge as you came in. So I was at the tail end of the house, so it was quite private as the back door was near. I could slip in and out without seeing anyone, or I could bring a friend home and no one would be any wiser, as long as we didn't make a racket. My room had a gold and black bedroom suite with a double bed, very neat, good, nice pedestal and dressing table stool. And near the door I had a two-seater beige sofa, which belonged to a friend called Eunice. She had no place to store her stuff when she changed apartments, and she left it with me, thinking she'd pick it up later, hoping to pick it up later, or planning to pick it up later. It was perfect because if ever I had a visitor and needed some privacy, it was the perfect couch to sit and chat on without anyone disturbing us. I will come back to this couch, and the big part is playing in getting me over the line eventually. But on this Wednesday night, eventually I fell asleep after listening to some gospel music on the Panasonic music system I took so much pride in. I had discovered that gospel music was perfect to play when you wanted a peaceful night of rest. So in no time I was in La La Land after an exhausting day at the office and in the sales field. I'm not sure, but it must have been around 3 a.m. in the morning or thereabouts when I had the strangest experience ever. I saw a pyramid-shaped and colored hill, gold-colored hill. I saw a pyramid-shaped and gold-colored hill, which I identified as one that was on the M2 East Highway in Johannesburg. It looked completely deserted with the sun's rays gleaming off the gold-colored sand. I also noticed that near the top of this former mine dump, there was a road which ran right around it. I stared at it as if expecting to see something. Now at this point exactly, I saw an old man walking on this road which was near the top of this deserted hill. I was in my bedroom looking up almost through the ceiling. Now I'm not sure at this point if I was dreaming or having a vision. He looked of great age, but he appeared strong, with no signs of aging whatsoever. He wore a cream garment which was a shade darker than the white cream color of the top of the hill we were on. I walked a short distance in the direction from where I was observing, and he looked towards me, laying many meters below in my bed. Then he slightly lifted his right hand and said, "Come here. I have come to answer your questions." I instantly knew which questions these were. No actual words came out of his mouth, but somehow, almost like in telepathy, I understood what he was saying. This was strange and had never happened to me before. I began to float above my bed, rising slowly, and in an instant I heard the sound that sounded like a massive vacuum cleaner hoover suck me up like a... I was terrified beyond explanation. Almost instantaneously, I found myself on the same road with him, just the two of us on this road. I looked below to see if anyone else was there watching, because this was busy Johannesburg and the M2 East was a frantic highway, but saw no one. His first words were direct. They pierced my soul with their compassion and kindness. He was now walking slowly away from me with his back turned towards me and said, "So you want to know who I am and where I come from?" I was stunned because I realized this was one of the questions I had actually asked God. Was this God? So here I was with this unknown and dignified man of great age who looked like he transgressed galaxies and crossed universes to get to me to answer these questions. In panic mode, I glanced down at my bed and saw my body still fast asleep. This was unknown territory for me, and fear threatened to capture me. When he silently said, "Don't fear," then he began to speak. "You see, I am not a man. Therefore I was not born, nor will I die. That is the nature of man. And because I was not born, I do not have a mother like you have." His voice was tender, yet assertive, but laced with so much compassion. I could feel the love. It was so tangible. The tears were streaming down my face as I followed him slowly as he began to walk away from me. Somehow he was urging me to follow him, almost like a magnetic power that drew me in. Yet still, there were no words spoken. I tried to move to my right side so I could get a glimpse of his face, but an unseen opaque force which I felt made it impossible for me to do that. My spirit sensed that he was smiling and intrigued, somewhat pleased that I had asked him these questions before he continued. "A man is born and he must die, because that is the nature of all men. But I am not a man like you are," he said, emphasizing it more this time. "I did not come from anywhere, nor am I going anywhere, because I fill the universe and all the galaxies, for I am omnipresent everywhere at the same time." Now, I was still trying my level best to get a glimpse of his face, but noticed how he walked with his hands behind his back and seemed to relish the teacher mode my questions had put him in. "You see," he went on, "I am the eternal, forever infinite and everlasting one, from whom all things flow and to whom all worship goes." I almost choked trying to digest that mouthful. He He went on, to you I appear as a man, but to every one of my creations, I am the greatest, biggest, and the most powerful creator. To the lion, I am the biggest and greatest lion of them all. To the ocean, likewise I am the biggest, greatest, and most powerful ocean. And to the mountain, I am the ultimate mountain. Before all mountains must bow. To every type of my creation, I appear to them in their form so they can relate. I appear to you as a man because you are a man, but to the lion, I appear as the biggest lion. To the wind as the biggest wind, and to the mountains as the most awesome biggest mountain. It was at this point that I discovered who was speaking to me. And I couldn't stop weeping. There was a power that permeated from this person that was holy and unbelievable. It made you feel almost incomplete as you stared and were in the company of perfection. It filled the place where we were. I was walking behind him slowly, making sure I didn't miss a single word. I once again sensed that he was enjoying himself educating me about him. I thought, what a contradiction, because when I asked questions to church leaders, I was castigated. But here, he was thrilled almost that I wanted to know about him. I lapped up every moment of this experience, and for days afterwards I did not speak to a soul about it. My fear was that people would think I was crazy. I could almost hear the mockers saying, here comes the guy who saw God on a mine dump hill outside Joburg. But my mind was now made up. There is a God, I held out one day when I could not suppress this information any longer. Naturally, in a race-obsessed country like South Africa, the first things many wanted to know were, did you see his face? Or what color is God? Now I do understand where this comes from, since our country was torn apart on a racial basis, and apartheid's beneficiaries and their rulers practiced discrimination even in churches by insinuating that black people were not made by God. They even had separate churches for the various races where black or brown-skinned citizens could not go. Logically, black people rebelled against this ungodly belief, but not before it had created massive insecurities in almost all of them. I asked God for wisdom in how I should answer these two questions, bearing these sensitivities. I eventually said, God is the color of pure and perfect love. I would often see how my black compatriots particularly felt let down by what they termed my politically correct answer. By His grace, I later stumbled upon the scripture that God is on the side of the oppressed. That's when they got their smile back. I'm sure this helped them cope a little better with the massive repression P.W. Botha, John Foster, and F.W. de Klerk visited on them during their different reigns, just because they were born with brown and black skin. I had so much to process when I came to my senses that I became quiet, or even silent, my friends said. I was trying to figure out how it was possible to have been on the pyramid-shaped hill with whom I now realized was God, and yet saw my body asleep in my bed at the same time. I also was amazed at the fact that there was no door nor room where this man could have come from except that he just appeared there out of nowhere. I did not need an answer for the remaining questions because in his response that day, he covered them all. I was a different man after this encounter. I got glued to the Bible even more and read the book of Proverbs and Psalms every day for about a month because they not only expressed God's laws and commandments but included the reward for being obedient and the punishment or ramifications for disobeying them. I figured out that if I were to become a born-again believer, I would do well to familiarize myself with what God expected of me before taking the plunge. It would make no sense to throw myself into a lifestyle without knowing what its demands and expectations of me were. Mervyn and Lucille, whom I ran into one night at the Pink Cadillac, agreed that it was the sensible thing to do. I felt vindicated, especially when Lucille told me that my face was glowing. I said, really? That's when Mr. Hennessy responded, the Bible said that those who look to God, their faces shall radiate with His glory. I was in my element. Every time I pass that hill on the M2 East until this modern day, I feel a presence in my car that I could not explain, even if it's 24 years later. I learned from my mentors that it was the presence of God coming upon me. One night a question popped up in my head that asked, so what else must happen before you believe? I thought about it the whole night, hardly getting any sleep. It was clear that there was a responsibility on me to take some action or the other. I put it off for a few days, but deep down inside, I knew exactly what I had to do.